So glad that y'all could join us. We're here at the Macedonia Baptist Church, all the way in the grand metropolis of Bel Air Cove, Louisiana. We're so happy that you could join us on today. I've been lonesome having to do this all by myself, and so I asked my beautiful wife if she could join us on today, or join me on today, so that we can have kind of a dialogue. We hope that we can encourage you in the Word of God with our where we're going to go, where Scripture is concerned. So let's jump right into it. We've had a wonderful time on our prayer line. Tonight we're going to be coming to you from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter number 14. And we're going to be in the New International Version on tonight. May read a little different than yours, but from the New International Version, Matthew chapter 14, beginning at verse number 22. Now, as we set this up, Matthew chapter 14, beginning at verse number 22. As we set this up, I want to set the scene for where we are right now and what it is that we intend to talk about on tonight. Jesus is just finishing his miracle where he fed the 5,000. Now, this miracle is a miracle about ministry. Jesus and his disciples had been heavily involved in ministry, and as they transition into this story where Jesus walks on water and the winds and the waves are troubling the disciples who are in the boat, I want us to understand that just because we're in the midst of what's going on, the ministry should not stop. There are still people who are in need, and you heard me say even on last Sunday that the church should not shrink in the face of adversity, but that the church should rise to the occasion. And so on tonight, as we look at Matthew chapter 14, verses 22, we're going to find some truths that are in the Word that has everything to do with our faith. Faith is what we need to get through this time, and it's our faith. It's your faith that's going to help us to understand how to cope with and how to deal with this, as well as on the other side of this. I think all of us are going to be so much better simply because of our faith. So let's get to Matthew chapter 14 at verse number 22. See what it says. This is what the New International Version says. It says, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd." Once again, he has they're done with ministry, and after they're done with ministry, he's sending his disciples ahead of him. And so I want us to understand in this verse, in setting this up, even for where we are right now, there are times when God will place us in situations where he already knows what the outcome is going to be. Jesus can see the storm that they're about to go through, but yet they're having to go through this situation. And Betsy, I want you to just jump in so that we can help those who are watching understand perhaps some of your experience in understanding how God works behind the scenes, and that he already knows what we're going through, but yet he's right there with us while we're going through whatever it is that we're going through.
When I went through the verses prior to getting to verse 22, there were some things that happened before Jesus gives instruction to disciples, I noticed that John the Baptist, his cousin, has been beheaded.
Yes.
He gets word of that. He gets that bad news. And then he tries to send the crowd away after he hears about John the Baptist being beheaded. He tries to send the crowd away, but then they follow him.
Right.
Then he goes on and he has compassion on them. And then he feeds the 5,000.
Right.
And it's at this point where we pick this up, I noticed that at this point he sends everybody away.
Right.
He sends the disciples away. He sends the crowd away, because at this point he needs to be alone.
Right.
He needs to get away and spend some time with God.
That's something even about leadership, in that, perhaps we may have some leaders that are watching. It's nothing wrong with getting away. Jesus understands the importance and the necessity of sometimes getting away. Getting away from a break, getting away for a break, getting away from it all so that you can regroup. But he went so that he could spend time with God. So sometimes we want to get away just so that we can go and have a good time, but it's also a good idea to get away so that you can just simply spend some time with God alone. So while the scene is set, he's dismissed them, he's put them in a boat, and he sent them across the water into a storm that we know that he saw coming all the way, because nothing catches God by surprise. We're caught by surprise, but nothing catches him by surprise. So in verse number 23, we pick it up where it says, after he had dismissed them, he went up onto a high mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was alone. I think we already touched on that he had an opportunity to get away, and he was alone all by himself. And got away simply to connect with God.
If I can, I can certainly say that this period of time has some added stress.
Yes.
Being at work, dealing with people who need help. There's a lot of demand on a lot of us from people who need help.
Right.
And you want to help people. You want to do all that you can to help provide and meet the needs of people. But in doing that, it can be overwhelming.
It can be.
And so what I noticed about the verses when it says about Jesus going by himself to pray, I envision Jesus simply having a conversation with his dad.
Right.
Not whining and complaining about, I have to deal with all of this, I'm stressed, but he's simply telling him, I thank you for getting me through it.
Right.
I'm dealing with the loss of my cousin. I've just tried to do all that I can to help people, to feed people who are hungry, but I'm tired.
Right.
And so I just envision him just telling his dad about what he's going through, but not whining and complaining, but
Right.
simply saying, yes, it's overwhelming, but I thank you that you helped me through it.
Right. And that should be some encouragement for those who still have a job. Probably frustrating with dealing with people, but, being able to go to God on your downtime and say, God, it's frustrating and it's difficult in this time, but I just thank you for still allowing me to have some employment.
Thank you, God.
So number 24, verse 24, it says that Jesus was away, but then it says, but the boat was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, and it was buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. The boat was a considerable distance away, and it was in waves and wind, and it says, not just one thing was against it, not just waves, but wind against it also. Life is like that sometimes. There was an old R&B song that says, "If it ain't one thing, it's another." You know, and so a lot of times that's what life is like. That, you know, as soon as you've got, you know, you're dealing with one thing and something else pops up. And certainly in this situation, it seems like everywhere you turn, it's just nothing but, you know, dim and dark news. If it's not one thing, it's certainly another. But it says that God was looking, that Jesus was looking while they were dealing with one thing and another. I just want to encourage you that whatever it is that you're going through, just understand that God is simply there. He's looking and he's watching.
Yeah, because what I noticed is that while this is happening, he's still on the mountain.
Yeah.
So he's high and lifted up,
Right.
and can see everything that's happening below where he is. So even now, God is high and he's lifted up, but he could see us where we are.
Right. And so I guess the question for some of us would be like, so why, if he sees what I'm going through, why doesn't he come down and help? So this is where the crux of this lesson comes together for us. If he sees us struggling, why didn't he come down? Why didn't he just simply help us out? This lesson is really all about faith, and it's all about building our faith. So when we look at verse number 25, I want us to understand that he's there and he's looking, but it says, during the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. So while they're going through the midst of what they're going through, he goes out walking on the lake. He doesn't go and stop the waves. He doesn't go and stop the wind from blowing. He just goes out and he's walking on the lake. So right now, God is in the midst of their struggles with him. But he is, what I'd like to say, he's above it all. Now, Betsy, do you know what a spotter is in weightlifting?
Yes. A spotter is there to encourage you, to root you on.
Right.
Also, my understanding of a spotter is if the weight gets too heavy for you, the spotter is there to help you lift the weight.
Right. So I want us to understand where faith is concerned, where God is trying to help us to build our faith, just like someone who's lifting weights. He's there really to be the spotter. So God comes in the midst of this situation. He's not taking the wind and the waves away. He's not taking the great weight away. What God is doing is saying, okay, I'm here. You can handle this. And I believe that's what he's saying now. In the midst of what we're going through, or anything that you're going to go through in the future, God is right there in the midst of it, above it all, saying you can handle it. That you can handle it.
Okay, I have a question, Pastor. In verse 25, when it says, in the NIV, I know it says shortly before dawn, but in the King James Version, it says in the fourth watch of the night. Can you explain what the fourth watch?
That's important also, and thank you for bringing me back to that detail. The fourth watch, throughout the night, there were watches where people would stand guard to take watch, to look out for other vessels, especially if they were in the middle of the night while everyone else was sleeping, look out for obstacles that may have been in the water. So they were in the fourth watch. This fourth watch was between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So the sun would not have come up. This is important because they would be in the dark. They'd be in the dark. We're going to come back to that a little bit because that's an important thing for us to remember. It's at night that this is happening. All right. Number 26, I think that's where we are.
Yes.
All right. So when Jesus and his disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It is a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. God now shows up. He manifests himself in the midst of this situation. So he shows up now. But most of the time when God shows up in our bad situation, he's not always in the form that we think he's in. And so when he shows up, he's almost unrecognizable. They've been in there, but when he shows up, he's now showing up. And when God shows up in our situation, his presence can and it will frighten you. And it ought to frighten you. You know why it ought to frighten you?
Why?
I'm waiting for you to say why. It ought to frighten you because if you're frightened by your situation and your circumstances, and then God shows up, if God is not bigger than your situation, if he's not bigger than your circumstances, then that means you're certainly more frightened than your situation than you are of God.
What you're saying is that we made the problem then bigger than our God.
Absolutely.
And our God is much bigger.
He's much bigger. So oftentimes when God shows up in our situation, we're more frightened of what he tells us to do or how he shows up to fix the situation than we are of the situation that we're going through here. So how do I recognize God in my situation? I recognize him when something else pops up and my situation that I'm going through doesn't scare me anymore. 9 times out of 10, that's God who showed up in the midst of that situation. So now as we transition to number 27, God then he speaks.
Yes. That was encouraging for me because many times when I look back on times when I thought there was a problem that just was so big that I even took my focus off of God, began to focus on the problem, if I could hear a word from God.
Right.
Many times it's when I need to press my way to get to church. Because if I could just hear a word from the Lord,
right, then
I know everything's going to be all right. And that's not oftentimes, but every single time. If I could hear a word from God, when I left wherever I was, it may not have been at church. I could have received the word while on my knees praying.
Right.
When I get up off my knees, I am certain everything is going to be all right because I heard from God.
Right.
Just one word from God can make a difference.
It certainly can. And look at what he says in verse number 27. In number 27, he says, "But Jesus immediately said to them, 'Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid.'" He said, take courage. When he says, take courage, what he's saying is, pull yourself together, man. You know, fellas, get yourself together. For some of us, it's a lot easier for us to pull ourselves together than it is for others. And then for a few, the ability to even hear God's voice, it's all that we need. But then there are people who just simply can't hear God's voice. And so that's why those who have the ability to pull themselves together, when he says take courage, he's saying to them that there is something that you can now do for yourself. Gather yourself, collect yourself. In the midst of some of the things that we're going through, some of the times when what really destroys us or can possibly kill us is when we panic in the midst of a situation. But if you can calm yourself down, and like Jesus is saying, take courage, it is I. I'm here, and I'm right here, right along with you.
I heard, I was listening to a message where the preacher said, if he's on an airplane, and as long as the pilot, even if they're going through turbulence, even if the plane is a little shaky and rocky, as long as the pilot stays in the cockpit, he's fine, because he knows the pilot is in control and everything's going to be all right. But if that pilot ever came out of the cockpit and has this look of fright and fear on his face, he knows it's time to panic. So, you know, if we know that Jesus, if he's our pilot, and as long as he's in the cockpit, then we shouldn't fear. because
Right.
we know everything is going to be all right. And our
Everything.
children need to see in us that we know that everything is going to be
Absolutely.
all right. And if they start to get afraid and fearful, we need to basically speak to them and say, listen, God is in control. As for this house, he's our captain.
Right.
Everything is going to be all right.
And so that's what I want to say to the members of the Macedonia Church. Take courage. Everything is going to be all right. God is in the midst of all of this. He's in control. Everything is going to be all right. And then when you recognize or when you hear his voice and you know that everything is going to be all right, man, something happens in Peter that's amazing. And I want us to see that in verse number 28. In verse number 28, Peter says, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. He said, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. So Peter recognizes that it's only, there are some places that only God can take you to, you know, that only God can call you to. So Peter recognizes that he's safe in the boat. And so he says, my goodness, my God is up above the situation. He is walking on the water.
Yes.
And so now I'm in the boat with a bunch of other frightened fellas.
Yes.
I want to come out of this situation.
Yes, sir.
I want to rise above
Yes.
the winds
Yes.
and the waves.
Hallelujah.
So what Peter is in essence asking, he says, you know, God, I want to come where you are. Now that's interesting because most people, when you talk about life and life situations, even right now, there are so many people who are afraid to die, but yet everybody talking about going to heaven, but nobody wants to die. But in order to get to a place or get on the next level where God is, or even if God is trying to take you to another level of faith, while God will come down and pick you up, that we're going to see in the next few verses, he's still not going to come down to your level. He'll come close enough to get you, but what God is trying to do is God is trying to pick us up and put us on a level, on the level where he is. God is really trying to take Peter's faith to another level. So now he's telling Peter, okay, in the verse, come on up in the next particular verse. So Peter is in the boat, and so now God is trying to get him on another level. Peter says, hey, God, can I come on the next level? And in the next verse, look at what God says to Peter. Come. Man, isn't that wonderful that it wasn't a, man, maybe let me think about it, or you're not ready yet.
Hallelujah.
He's saying to him, come on up. Peter then, in verse 29, then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water towards Jesus. God gives Peter an invitation to experience himself on another level. Peter comes from down in the boat out, and Peter is now walking on the water. Peter leaves the comfortable confines of the boat. Now I want y'all to understand that the boat is not sinking. The boat is just rocking. The boat is, it's not at a place where they're afraid because of the situation. And that's many of us now. The boat is rocking. We're in the situation and we some of us are afraid, but the boat is not sinking. God is there right along with you, trying to build your faith, trying to get you to the next level. But what Peter does is he leaves his comfort zone. In order to go next level, he leaves his comfort zone. In order to go next level, he leaves his friends.
Yes. Yes.
in order to go next level, he leaves his old mentality. Now, his old mentality, with good common sense, would say, stay in the boat. He's never seen anybody walk on water. He's never seen anybody else up at the next level, but what he does is he hears the voice of God who says, come.
Come.
And so now he has this mentality shift. If your faith is going to go to the next level, you got to sometimes leave your comfort zone. You can't build faith comfortably. You've got to leave some friends who have little faith. You've got to just get away from some people. And then certainly you've got to change your mindset. You've got to change the way you think about God and what God can do. Listen, if you're doing something that doesn't require you to exercise some faith, you'll never ever grow in faith. Peter would have never ever come to be the Peter that we know he is if he had never gotten out of the boat. We all know Peter's story. All of the rest of the fellas, they didn't go to the next level like Peter did. Peter, when he walked, his shadow would cure people.
Yes.
That's because Peter got to a level where he was simply exercising his faith. But I want you to know, whenever you're lifting weights, whenever you're exercising your faith, you're not going to be as strong as you'd like to be on day one.
That's right.
You've got to grow to that. Look at what happens with Peter as he's trying to grow. Peter gets that, but on verse number 30, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid, beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Listen, when you get to the next level, I want you to understand something. When you get to the next level, what you see on the next level, you've never seen it before. I want to prove it to you just in the text. Peter, remember we said it's nighttime, right?
Yes.
It's between 3 and 6 o'clock. It doesn't say when Peter saw the waves. It says when Peter saw the wind. Now, I don't know who can see wind, but what happened with Peter was that he went to another level and he began to see things like God sees things. If you want to build your faith, if you want to go next level, building your faith, you get then to see when you get on God's level, because now Peter is on God's level. He's walking on the water just like God, and now he gets to see what God sees. And when he gets to see what God sees, he doesn't understand. He can't even comprehend, how is it that I can see the wind?
And I'll be, at this point, normally when reading the Bible, and I know we're not supposed to add anything or take anything away, but I would have read into that, Peter saw the effects of the wind.
Right.
Just kind of glossing over the fact that it actually says he saw the wind.
Well, he actually saw the wind. And listen, at nighttime, and I want to tell you something, especially in the South. I was watching television, watching the Weather Channel like I often do, to see what's going on with the weather, and they popped up and they were talking about storms that happen, tornadoes, because we've been having this rash of tornadoes that have been going through the South. And what the meteorologist was saying is that it's more common in the South that storms or tornadoes pop up during the nighttime. And they're far more dangerous because you can't see the wind. That's exactly what he said. You can't see the effect, you can't even see the effects
right.
of the wind at night. We wake up the next morning and then we see all of the devastation that the wind has caused. But here it is, God had taken Peter
yes.
to another level, that now he not just feeling the waves and the effects,
right.
but now he can actually see the wind.
He's got spiritual sight.
He does have spiritual sight, but he doesn't understand that. And I just want to encourage somebody that you're going to get to a place that when you're building your faith, that it's not going to be easy for you to understand. It's not going to be easy for you to comprehend some spiritual things, but hang in there. And whenever you get to the place where things are too overwhelming for you, then you do just like Peter did, and you say, Lord, save me. I don't understand this. But what Peter was saying was, Peter was really saying, Lord, deliver me from myself. Not just save me, because Peter was already walking on the water.
Yes, he was.
He was already, it wasn't that he stepped out and immediately sank. He was actually walking on the water. So when he says save me, he's saying, listen, deliver me from myself. Because the reason why I'm underwater right now is because now I'm not seeing things through the eyes of faith.
Yes.
I'm not walking in faith.
Yes.
I was already on the water. It's not like he hadn't done it. So the reason why Peter is under the water is not because God didn't allow him to be on the water. It had everything to do with him and his own faith.
Right.
And so even for us, a lot of times when we're struggling with some things, it has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with us ourselves. And you building your faith, that's not on God to build your faith. God gives each and every one of us a measure of faith. But in order for us to build our faith, that's on you. Just like nobody's going to give you a pill to get muscles, you got to get in the gym and you got to work out yourself. For your faith comes by hearing, and by hearing the word of God. You've got to get in the word yourself in order to build your faith. There's some of us who are, I said it a while back, that we've been spoon-fed the word too long. That means that the spotter has been there too long. But yet Jesus here, once again, is the spotter. When Peter says, save me, Jesus then goes and grabs him by the hand, and then they get back in the boat. Number 31. They get back. Immediately, Jesus reaches out his hand and caught him. And he says, you of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? If you're building your faith, just want you to know that the spotter is always going to be there to catch you. That's what Jesus was. He didn't let him sink. He didn't let him die. The spotter was there. And I'm saying to you that whatever your situation is that you're going through right now, whatever it is that you're experiencing, if you're not dead, that means that you still have an opportunity to say, Lord, save me. Yes. Lord, help me. And he's there. He's there to help you get back on your feet, put you back in the boat in a safe place where you can handle life and all of its situation. Now, I've been waiting all day long to get to verse number 32. Because verse number 32 is the conundrum for me. I know many of you have a lot of questions, but this is the question. This verse always has stumped me. And I always have this question behind verse number 32. It says, and when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. So they gets back in the boat and the wind and the waves stop. So that means that training day is over. The training, the exercises are over. But the exercise was about building our faith. So my question is that when I was growing up, Betsy, if I saw one of my friends doing something amazing, like if they was doing something like just like spectacular, riding a motorcycle, go-kart, if they were playing football or basketball, some type of move or something, if we were diving while we were swimming, if they did something spectacular, I would always say, man, let me try. It's my turn. I want to do it. My question about this verse is that there were 11 other fellas watching Peter walk on the water. My question was, Why didn't somebody say, hey,
Can I do that?
can I try? I want to do that. Let me try it.
Yes.
And the thing I want to share with a lot of people is that there are a lot of people around us who are full of faith. There are a lot of people who are superheroes where faith, they're giants in faith. What I would like to see is more people say when they see amazing things, say to the people of great faith, how did you do that?
Yes.
Let me try. Instead of always being, so passive and just watching life, allowing life to beat up on us all, Peter, the waves were overwhelming. The wind was overwhelming, but he wasn't concerned with that. Peter said, I want to go to another level. I want to do what he's doing in the midst of this great storm.
Yes. Yes.
I wish more people would be like Peter. I wish these fellas would have said, man, let me try.
Yes.
Let me try. And I want to say to all of us who are watching that, man, when you see great people of faith, great men and women of God who have great faith, when you see them exercise that faith, you need to find out how is it that you do that. Just like a great chef who has a good recipe, how did you cook that? Can I have the recipe? You ought to be asking people, how did you do that?
And I would say, if I had to go back to the beginning verses, Jesus is walking on the water, but before he walked on the water, he spent time with God.
Yes, absolutely. And that's how you're going to get to places where you have great faith. Before you're at a place where you're walking above life situations, you've got to spend time with God. You've got to spend time with God in an effort to build your faith. I want to thank y'all for joining us on tonight. It looks like we may have had a few people who've got some questions. No questions. They were just saying amen. Go ahead, Pastor. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate your support. As always, every week when we have Bible study at the Macedonia Church, we give our participants an opportunity to give, to sow a seed. And this seed that we sow on our Wednesday night Bible studies, it's into the lives of some young person. It's for our scholarship fund. What we do is at the end of our Bible studies, we pass a collection plate and we put small amounts in that collection plate, and that goes to our scholarship fund. And at the end of year, when we've got a graduating student, we take that pool of money and we give to that student to help them on life's journey. So if you're feeling generous, and we hope that you are, please contribute a small amount. We want to thank you for those of you who have been contributing. We can't do this without you. We certainly appreciate your gifts, and we certainly appreciate you partnering with us. Going to the next level, as you may see, has cost us something. What we've been trying to do is not free. We just want to present God in a better light. And also, we want to do ministry like Jesus did. We want to feed the multitude. We want to clothe those who are naked. We still want to inspire young minds. So we just want to ask y'all to continue to partner with us. Givelify and at Cash App. Continue to partner with us. We also want to ask that you join us on this coming Sunday. Coming Sunday, we're going to continue to observe Park, Praise, Pray, and we might do a little preaching on Sunday, but it's the fourth Sunday of the month, and we observe our Lord's Supper. And for those of you, the information should be up on the screen for the instructions about what to do where the Lord's Supper is concerned. Betsy, want to help us out with that information about who they can call, where they can go, where the Lord's Supper is concerned. Ms. Jody, I believe it's the last slide on our PowerPoint, if you'll put that up.
Yes, we're going to ask the members to come to the church. You will not have to get out of your cars. Come to the church, drive up, and you will be handed your communion. And what we're asking is, if you cannot come to the church, and that will be on Saturday, this Saturday between 10:30 and noon. If for some reason you cannot come to the church to pick up your communion, please call Sister Marjorie, and you'll see her number on the screen. And what she will do is coordinate with people in your area or in your neighborhood, so that when they pick up their communion, they can also pick up yours. So please call Sister Marjorie if you are unable to come on Saturday between 10:30 and noon to pick up your communion.
All right, and we're asking everyone to come early between 10:30 and noon to pick it up. In the event we've got some inclement weather, we still want you to bring it back on Sunday. But if you're certain that you're going to be here on Sunday, certainly get here early, because we won't be passing it out after 9:30, after we get started. Make sure that you get here early, or come on Saturday and pick it up early. But won't be any passing out on Sunday, because those who are going to be passing it out going to be following some strict sanitation guidelines, and also practicing social distancing. And so when you come on Sunday, we don't want anyone getting out of their cars. We want everyone to remain safe in their vehicles. So we want to thank you once again for coming. We appreciate we don't take for granted that you could have been anywhere else. And so we just appreciate your time. We ask that you will continue to support us. Like us on Facebook. Come and subscribe to our YouTube page, and also like us on Instagram, or follow us on Instagram. Macedonia Baptist Church of Bel Air Cove, Louisiana. We thank you, and Macedonia, as always, we love you to life.
I do want to give a shout out to Jemiah Gallo. She won the Bible trivia. We did a Zoom Bible trivia with our youth and young adult on Monday, and she won a gift card because she had the most points.
All right. Well, we thank our young people who will continue to meet virtually. We're trying to do the best we can to continue to train up the children in the way that we should go, or the way that they should go. And so, but we just want to thank all those youth counselors who work well along with it. Thank you, Betsy. This has been so nice having you here with me on tonight. And we hope that it's been just as pleasurable for all of those who are out there watching. Macedonia, we love you to life.
We love you to life.